This is Death in Ice Valley, an original podcast series from the BBC World Service and NRK. Although the much-loved seabird of the Antarctic lives in the southern hemisphere, in the 1960s and 70s, its namesake was taking to the skies off the Norwegian coast, way up north.
3, 2, 1, ignition.
And the Russians were watching, closely. Episode 5, The Penguin.
I am Marit Higraff.
And I'm Neil McCarthy. Now, Marit, you've been examining this case closely for a couple of years now, trawling through police files and talking to witnesses. But there's one place that took a lot of perseverance to get into. The secret police archive.
Yes, that's right. It guards its secret well. But along with my colleague Ståle Hansen, who's the documents expert on the case, we were granted permission to look at the secret file of the Isdal Woman. Well, we're here at the secret police in Norway, holding the file, the secret file of the Isdal Woman. We see here they're marked with secret.
Yes, that's the classification from 1970, and secret in the Norwegian system it's the second highest classification. The first document here is marked the Bergen politikammer, the police in Bergen. So they are also documents that we have in the police investigation file. Mm. So there aren't very many documents here that are actually produced by the counterintelligence police.
How was it to be inside the secret police archive?
It was exciting to look inside the file, especially since journalists hadn't been allowed to see it for so long. We had high expectations that we'd find some hidden secrets inside, but we're surprised that it was a very thin file, which didn't seem to offer us much. But there was one very interesting classified document.
This is a document. It's dated December 22nd, 1970, and it tells about a fisherman, a local fisherman in Tananger, who claims that he has seen the woman close to his home, and at the same time as the Norwegian defense tested a new missile system, the so-called Penguin missile system. And she is supposed to have been watching these missile tests at several different times, and she is supposed to have been in Bergen and Stavanger at the same time as the missile tests were conducted. And that is, of course, very suspicious.
And very interesting.
It's very interesting because it's more than just speculation. You know, they have done some real investigation around this, and it would suit well the other items that the police discovered. I mean, the fake passports, the wigs, the unprescripted glasses, and so on. That points towards that she might have been some sort of intelligence agent.
At the top it says unidentified body of a woman found in Isdal.
Yeah.
At the end of this document it says that a certain police officer in Stavanger is supposed to make an interrogation with the fisherman Bergen Roth today, 22nd of December 1970, it says.
Yeah.
It's the same day as the document is dated.
Yes. And the problem is that the documents from that interrogation is missing. It's not to be found in the police investigation files. It's not to be found in the counterintelligence police. So that document, which would be extremely interesting to hear what this fisherman Bergen Roth actually saw, is missing.
That's quite a coup to find such specific intelligence. Maybe we could find the fisherman who reported the sighting of the Isdal woman to the authorities if he's still alive, or his family. Where is Tananger?
It's a small fishing port near Stavanger in the south of Norway, where we were earlier in the footsteps of the Isdal Woman. I've already started looking for Mr. Roth, but first let's hear a bit more about the Penguin missile testing program mentioned in the Secret Service documents.
It's a funny name for a presumably devastating missile. I'm assuming it didn't waddle, but the point is it didn't go in a straight line.
Well, I'm no weapons expert, but yes, it was a guided missile that could seek its target. It was cutting-edge weapons technology at the time, and Norway was a pioneer in this field. Remember, Norway was on the front line of the Cold War as a NATO member and had a land border with the Soviet Union. Ivar Neumann, Director of Norwegian Social Research, is our expert on the period.
Norway is a small country, but it has a tradition of producing stuff that is militarily useful. So the Penguin came out of a small but fairly advanced weapons industry. And Norway is still doing this, by the way. We still have cutting-edge weapon technology that is filling niches around the world's markets. So yes, Penguin was at the forefront of that.
The firing range is situated in the southern part of western Norway. The launcher building is about 50 meters above sea level. The missiles are fired from here.
What sort of a target would that have been for the Soviets to find out more?
Well, one doesn't need to know anything about new weapons in order to understand that they're targets, because anything that can change the status quo would be of interest to an intelligence service. And what they would like to know would be how advanced are our production sort of timelines. What can the weapon do? Specifically, how far can it shoot and how quickly can you get this stuff deployed, etc. So all this would be a top priority for any intelligence service.
Countdown starts at X-2 hours after the missile has been thoroughly checked.
And do we know if the Penguin program was infiltrated by spies?
The intelligence service wouldn't do its job if it didn't spy on this kind of thing. That's what they are paid to do.
During firing trials, it is necessary to clear the danger zone and guard the area according to usual practice. This is performed by gunboats from the Norwegian Navy. Incidentally, these are of the type on which Penguin later is to be installed.
We needed a better weapon.
Henry Kjell Johansen led the development of the Penguin program and observed the missiles being fired from the test site near Tananger.
But none of the Western countries had an anti-ship missile developed. The Russian had done so, a very large, more than 2 tons missile. So in the early 60s, we started developing a very light one, because these boats we had was very small, and we had to have many missiles, and they had to be light.
During the last 10 minutes before firing, it is checked that no undesired ships are within the danger zone. At X-5 minutes, the security officer makes sure that no ships will enter the danger zone before the firing operation has been completed, and then gives the all-clear to the firing officer.
Almost every time a Russian fishing vessel or a small ship traveled with the engine and stopped in that area, very close to the firing range, so that they could pick up the signals from the telemetry, and they could see the trajectory and get some information about the status of our development. So there was always somebody there.
The firing officer informs all positions that it is now X-5 minutes. In the telemetry room, the tape recorder is started.
And I remember once, which was rather scary, because the big Sverdlov class cruiser, enormous Russian ship with lots of large guns,
30, 29, 28, 27, 26...
stopped right outside the firing range. And I was on board this small fast patrol boat with a missile.
19, 18, 17, 16...
And was going to fire. And at that time we saved the missile. We had parachutes and floating bags, so at the end of the trajectory we could save it.
3, 2, 1, ignition.
And he took up his mic, the captain, and said very clearly, if you take the missile, I will shoot. And it's a small ship with this enormous Russian ship. Of course, they didn't do anything.
During this particular trial firing, the missile performed, as planned, the following maneuvers.
I think what I did was to monitor the trajectory of the missile, the range of the missile, picked up all the telemetry data, etc., and then he went off.
Elevation on firing, 15 degrees. After 200 meters, flattened out, then continued to climb slowly. At 4.2 kilometers, changed direction to the right. At 5.9...
And of course it was very important for them because if we were successful in developing the Penguin missile, we would have enormous power, more than 100 missiles against an invasion. Oh, that is not a simple thing for the invader. It would be rather dangerous to attack Norway.
So the Penguin was Norway's and the West's prized light missile system. A prize for the Soviets too if they could get their hands on it. Here's Eva Neumann again.
I remember seminars and when the Cold War ended and there was a thaw in East-West relations and communism simply fell and was discredited, never to rise again in Europe, I would have supposed. And I remember seminars where elderly Russian officers were telling us about what they saw in the periscope when they were going into these and these and these fjords, etc. And I remember one guy came and said, you know, it's so nice to be here because I've never set foot in Norway, but I must have watched the country 70 or 80 times. You know? So this is just a routine thing, and it's still going on, obviously.
When you were growing up in the 70s, did you see any periscopes of Russian submarines popping out of the fjords?
No, thanks God I didn't. But I certainly grew up with these rumors about Soviet submarines sneaking around in our fjords, and especially up north in Norway, where I come from, where I grew up.
And was lots of military up there as well, because you're getting closer, I suppose, to the border with the Soviet Union?
Yes, I actually grew up in a military town where the Norwegian defense are having their soldiers posted, and we're also, NATO used this town. They come in there at least once a year to train in Arctic conditions. So yes, I was used to kind of heavy military activity when I grew up.
And was there ever any tension, sort of Cold War tension in the air that you remember back then?
What I do remember is that I got scared from news reports about atomic bomb. It was a scaring thing because my hometown was obviously a target.
Yeah, because people have talked to us about an invasion coming from Russia. It would obviously move from the north of Norway and come down. So the Russians were all over that coastline with their surveillance. And we know they were definitely snooping around the missile tests. But was the Isdal Woman a Russian spy? That we don't know yet. Her gold dental work certainly pointed us towards Germany or Eastern Europe. We need to do some more tests of our own to find out more about her identity. And I'm thinking DNA, our unique genetic code.
Yes, so I took the tissue samples and the teeth we found at the Goddess Institute in Bergen to a laboratory in Oslo for analysis.
I wasn't there with you for this, but what's it like in a DNA lab? What are the conditions? What's the setup?
It's very sterile, and we weren't allowed to go into the rooms, actually. We had to watch them work through a glass window, you know. They don't want these samples to be contaminated in any way, and we didn't want that either, of course.
And you took the teeth and the tissue samples?
Yes, all experts say teeth give the best possibilities for DNA, but when they tested them, the results came back negative. It turned out that the teeth had been washed in some chemicals back in 1970. So our only hope was the tissue samples. Beate Schönberger and Margrethe Stenersen are both scientists at the Department of Genetic Kinship and Identity at Oslo University Hospital. And this is the moment when they analyzed the results.
Nå trykker jeg det inn.
Now I'll push the buttons.
Den første. Første prøven.
This is the first tissue block, the first sample. Which is it?
Skal vi se, 97, det milten.
Let's see. 97. That is the spleen.
Oi, her. Det noe her.
Wow. Yes, here. There is something here. There is something here. Very good. It is a bit degraded in the heaviest fragments, but there are definitely results here.
Ja.
Så bra da. Flink du.
Ja.
Good, you are clever. Yes. Oh, so exciting. Goodness gracious.
Og skal vi se på nyren.
Now we'll have a look at the kidney.
Ja, her det også resultater.
Så fin. Og det jo, så vidt jeg kan se, akkurat de samme.
We can see exactly the same results on this one. And since we get the same results from both organs, it's likely that the data is actually from the dead person, that we haven't got contaminated samples.
2 stykker, 2-3 stykker. Og det tilnærmet en fullverdig profil. Så dette veldig bra.
It only misses data in about 2 markers, so it's practically a full DNA profile. So it is very good.
Det en dame.
And we can see that it is a woman. Yes, we can say that for certain.
Altså, dette sier jo egentlig lite om hvem damen så skal man kunne si
It doesn't say much about who the woman is. For that, we'd need a reference sample from a relative.
Dette et godt utgangspunkt, og slik det når vi sender det.
But this is a good starting point when we send it to the DNA registry. Yes.
Nei, men
That's quite an exciting moment. It's like a missing piece of code, something unique to her, as if she's telling us something. Were you surprised?
Yes, these samples were old, so clear results weren't guaranteed in any way. This was a really significant moment because a DNA profile can open many doors for us, and at the end, this is the key to her identity. Nils Jarle Øvåg from the Bergen police has been working on this case with us. He's the leader of the forensic department in Bergen, and he's also a member of the identification unit at the National Criminal Investigation Service. So what can we do with the DNA?
When we started, we think, okay, 50-50 if we get the profile or not. And we get a good profile. And then we can look into it and see some population, at least. Where in the world can this woman comes from? That's the first. And are we lucky we can compare with relatives? If there somebody comes up and say, hey, this woman may be related to me, we can look into that.
And where are you searching for the matches, the DNA match?
The official way we go when we get a new profile, we send out to Interpol a new, what we call a black notice, that we have unidentified body and that we have got a new DNA profile, so there are new information in the file, and we want them to look in their databases if there are matches there.
So what we need is the DNA of a relative to make a match with the Isdal woman. So if anybody listening thinks they may recognize any aspect of her story, it's worth getting in touch. In terms of the Interpol databases, I was looking into that. It's quite interesting. Their database contains DNA submitted by police from offenders, crime scenes, missing persons, and unidentified bodies. It's been going for about 15 years and has nearly 200,000 DNA profiles from more than 80 countries. But of course, the Isdal woman's profile won't be in that database because she died in 1970. But if any of her relatives were for some reason entered into the Interpol database, then we could get a hit.
Well, we might do. It's a long shot, and the Interpol database is obviously not very big, but it will definitely be exciting to see what answers that we get.
I mean, up till now, we've had lots of witness testimonies, which are very valuable. We've had lots of speculation, and we've had some good strong documents from the police. But this is the first time we've got some real science, something sort of immutable, some scientific fact. Hair code, which can't really be challenged. So it feels like it is a great breakthrough, and we are getting closer to whoever she is.
Yes, it's definitely very valuable for us. Anyway, at the end, if somebody out there comes along and telling, I might be a relative of this woman, this DNA profile is the key.
We can test them, we can match it with her profile, and then we'll know for sure whether it is or it isn't. I've also been thinking more about her age. She wrote down in her hotel registration cards that she was 25 to 30 years old usually, and her date of birth. Now we know there was a lot of false information on those cards. There were false names, fake passport numbers, made-up professions and all the rest. But maybe her age is something she was less likely to lie about. I mean, it's harder to fool people about how old you are. Can DNA help us pinpoint a person's age?
No, DNA cannot, but that's one thing the teeth can help us with. Here's the odontologist Professor Sigrid Kvål in Oslo again. She's got the original age assessment from the forensic pathologist who worked on the Isdal Woman case, Professor Bang. And she's also conducted her own examinations on the teeth.
Professor Bang has written both in English and in French, and I presume it was sent out to Interpol. And he did the initial examination in 1970. And he writes, between the central incisors in the upper jaw, there is a distinct open space. The rather extensive restoration and distinct occlusal and incisal wear, also including the third molars, indicating that the person is likely to be older than 25 years of age. A special investigation of 6 teeth based on the extension of the root transparency indicates that the person most likely is in her 30s, but it does not exclude the possibility that the person could be slightly below 30. The examinations we have done afterwards is to do an age estimation based on the x-rays. The conclusion of that is the same as Professor Bang did 47 years ago.
Professor Bang actually worked a lot on this case. It seems to me that he was quite a burning soul. It was a big case for him. He spent years trying to find some answers on the Isdal Woman case.
He's talked to a dentist in India, he talked to a dentist who's practiced in Germany, he talked to a French colleague. So he's really gone a long way to find out about this woman. But it still remains an open case.
Still very much an open case.
It seems she was being truthful about her age. Teeth x-rays then and now show her age to be probably between 25 and early 30s. So she'd have been born between 1940 and 45, as it says on her hotel registration cards.
Yes, born during the Second World War, and by the middle of the Cold War, secret police documents are saying she's been spotted in Tananga, where the Penguin missile tests were taking place. We've arrived at the site where they tested the Penguin missiles in 1970. This would have been a secret place where secret weapons were being tested. And just offshore, there were Russian vessels or Soviet submarines up and down the coastline trying to find out more about these missile tests. At the same time that the Isdal Woman was spotted also very nearby in Tananga. And Marit, is this the first time you've been up to this geographical spot in the story?
Yes, I've never been here before.
Yeah.
And I get, it's kind of a creepy feeling of being back in the Cold War or something. Seeing all this
ruins of military activity, thinking about the tests going on out here.
And the radar mast, slowly rotating still as if somebody's listening. It's still going on. But a very beautiful and dramatic spot as well, isn't it? The sea's there, it's catching the light, it's silver, and the waves are breaking on the shoreline. And here we are, looking out, as many people would have been back then on a Cold War world. How has the search for the fisherman been going?
Well, it turns out Berton Roth died some years ago, but I've tracked down his son, and we have a meeting with him in Tananger.
Here we could have up to like 40 trawlers for the shrimps, just here in the inner harbour, because they had a shrimp factory over there.
Sverre Roth, with straight fair hair and blue eyes, is in his 60s now. Clean-shaven and wearing a well-ironed white shirt, he strolls along the boardwalk. Clapboard houses overlook the fishing boats bobbing about in the harbour. Freshly caught crab and lobster roll around in large vats of boiling water on the quayside. His father used to fish out of this harbour.
Yeah, this was in 1970, and my father has just got his new trawler, and he was working on his trawl to fix it, to repair it, and approaching him when he was alone at the quayside, there walked a lady. Afterwards, he remembered about this lady. She looked Slavic, could be Russian, could be Romanian. But that was first, he was thinking, after he saw her speaking on the other quay with one of the officers at the MTB Navy vessels, because at this time they were trying out the Penguin rockets for the Norwegian defense system.
So this woman, first she came down here where we are walking now.
Yes. She came and she looked around when she was out there and he was repairing the trawl. She was nicely dressed and nice hair, he said, and didn't say a word. But he became suspicious when he observed her afterwards speaking with one of the officers. Why she should, he always says, because she was speaking some time with him. It wasn't like 1 minute, it was longer time. And why she should speak with him so long time? It was suspicious. And he was 100% sure, I'm 99% sure. But he was sure that he discovered the Isdal Woman.
The police drawings and descriptions of the Isdal Woman published in the newspapers left Roth in no doubt it was the same woman he'd seen on the quayside a few weeks before. And that's what made him call the police.
The secret police file didn't mention that the Isdal Woman was talking to a naval officer, just that she was spotted in Tananger during the tests. Sounds more like a rendezvous, doesn't it?
Yes, and Tananger is very remote. For a foreigner, a nicely dressed woman to come out there alone and then stand talking to an officer for a long time seems strange.
Could she have been having a relationship with an officer? Or was she really getting secret intelligence in plain sight?
His theory was that she had this man she was talking with could be an accomplice. And that was what he believed.
An accomplice in what way?
With her.
And he was a Norwegian?
It most likely, yes. He was an officer on one of the MTBs. Most of them, of course, were Norwegians. But in theory, it could be one of from the other navies also, the NATO navies. But he thought it was a Norwegian.
So Berton Roth reported his sighting of the Isdal Woman to the police. And what happened next?
A few days later, Berton Roth was paid an unexpected and menacing visit and given a chilling warning about his personal safety.
Next time on Death in Ice Valley.
It was like a cover-up. It was like a layer of protection around this whole question about this lady.